So I would just firstly like to start by welcoming everybody to our webinar on the ISO 9001 remote implementation. Clearly over the past few weeks, we as a business, as I'm sure everybody has had to adapt, we had been doing remote visits for quite some time, but not to the extent that we are at the moment. So we thought it might be useful to go through how we are delivering this now to our clients. Hopefully you can all see the presentation, 9001 remote webinar implementation slides. We are sharing these slides with you. What I'm going to do now is just go through some introductions and go through the agenda of this morning, go through some controls with you so that you know what we are looking at if you haven't used Zoom before. So by way of introduction, my name is Jennifer. I'm the Managing Director of ISO Quality Services. For anybody that doesn't know me or I haven't spoken to before, I've been in the industry for 10 years. I am joined today by Colin Watkins, our Senior Lead Assessor, who has been with the business and in the industry for over 15 years. Colin, if you just give a quick hello, and then we will, I will obviously pass over to you a little bit later on.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're all keeping safe.
Thank you. So just a bit of housekeeping information. I believe all of your microphones will be muted so that obviously we don't get any unwanted interference. If you have a question, please pop it in the Q&A box, and what I will do is if the question is relevant to the part that Colin is actually presenting, I will ask Colin the question to answer there and then. If it's something that's more general, we will have a section at the end that will come back to those questions. Please feel free to use the comment in the chat box. I will be on for the whole of the session monitoring the chat. So Colin will probably less likely to look at the chat, so I'll make sure that I'm looking at that and moderating that. So please feel free to pop any comments in the chat function at all. And just by way of introduction, if you're not aware of who we are, ISO Quality Services is a family-run ISO certification, consultancy and training organisation. We're based in Worcester in the West Midlands of the UK, and we cover the whole of the world really with regards to those services I've just mentioned. We are members of the Hereford and Worcester Chamber of Commerce. We're members of quite a few chambers of commerce actually, which is useful for us for where we get a lot of our advice and guidance, and we're also members of an organisation locally called Circle to Success. Our mission is to inspire organisational change, and then this is backed up by our values, which is seen here and can be found further on our website. So that's just a little bit of information with regards to who we are. So what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to turn off mine and Colin's video, and I'm going to move us over. I'm going to hand over to Colin to start the main part of today's webinar. So, oh, Bed's just joined us there. Right, so if this all works correctly, I should be able to hand control to Colin. And Colin, I will hand over to you from now.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. And once again, welcome everybody to this webinar. Hang on, a little bit of a, need to go back.
Have you
Sorry
got
for the
controls?
delay.
Have you got control?
No,
now?
I haven't got control yet.
Oh,
no.
Okay, sorry, that's my fault. Right, now.
Right, and so now they go. Yeah, that's better. Just want to go back to the previous slide, kick us off. Right, so yeah, purpose aim of today is to demonstrate how certification of your quality management system can be achieved remotely, but without compromising on the depth of inquiry nor evidence required, so as not to diminish the concept. Just some basic background information first of all. Standards is a framework on which to base your quality management system. It's not designed to replace your management system, but to enhance it and provide support, making sure that all aspects of your business are developed on a positive basis. There's no mistake, as the requirements reflect good business practice. And through the remote implementation process, I'm sure you will find that there's a fair chance you're already meeting most of the requirements, or there are plans afoot to introduce them. What I would like you to remember is that the complexity of the system should basically be commensurate with the needs and expectations of your interested parties, and definitely not to meet the needs of a certification body. The approach of this revised standard differs greatly from the previous versions. It's less prescriptive, gives your business more flexibility, although the following, say what you do what you say, and evidence it, still apply. In summary, it's a process and risk-based management tool, very much leadership-centric. You may or may not be aware that the standard is broken down into 7 clauses. It's my intention to go through each one, but obviously in the time constraints, and I won't be able to go into them in a great deal of depth. But what I'll be attempting to do is give an explanation as to what they mean, their practical relevance, and also at the same time give an indication as to what an assessor will be looking for. But remember that this is a generic standard. Now, the 7 clauses are context, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and improvement. Now, the first clause, context, clause 4, I think you may potentially ask the relevance of this clause. But by going through the process, it'll enable you to fully understand your business. Through looking at it from a process point of view, it will help you to develop your ongoing business strategy, help you to establish a meaningful quality policy, and also assist the objective setting process. Also, through scoping your management system, you can make the decision what you wish to include within it for certification purposes. However, in my view, anything relating to service or product delivery should be included within the scope. If we just briefly have a look at internal, external issues, and I'll give you a few examples. Internal issues, it could be staff morale, it could be staff turnover. External issues could be technological changes, complying with legislation and changing legislation, competition from your competitors. Interested needs and expectations of interested parties, examples of interested parties, your customers, staff. Expectations of interested parties could well be requiring a quality product, value for money, delivery on time. Staff expectations, perhaps guidance and governance, working in a safe place, safe environment, being treated with respect, career progression. If we move on to the scope of your management system, essentially that would include the physical boundaries. So that's your premises, departments, warehouse, etc. Could well mean if you do part of your service delivery as a client's premises or on site, that would be included. As well as the physical boundaries within the scope of your management system, you'd be looking to include the appropriate activities, administration, procurement, staff management, management of your external providers, that's your subbies, and your suppliers, fulfilling the needs and expectations of your interested parties. And must be remembered that the scope must be documented. Processes that would relate to your processes within your management system, how they interact with the standard, and also underlying is having confidence that these processes are being observed. Clause 5 takes us into leadership and commitment. There is a difference between leadership and management. Leadership impacts on behavior and instills culture within the organization. I have heard it say that culture is king, although I suppose perhaps in this current climate, cash will be king. Management focuses on processes, but obviously I'm sure most of us would expect management to have leadership qualities. Leadership and commitment requirement has been elevated and given greater emphasis within the revised standard. In fact, from an assessment point of view, we would expect a member of top management to be involved in the implementation process. This section is quite prescriptive. It talks in terms of whilst top management can delegate roles and responsibilities within the management system, they should take overall responsibility for its fulfillment and meeting its intended outcome. Part of leadership should be the promotion of undertaking a process approach and risk-based thinking, and also making sure the quality management system achieves its intended results or outcome. It should also,
If I could just interject there, I've just had a quick question around how we are currently, which I think it's related to what you're talking about now, how we are currently monitoring from a remote perspective the leadership within an organisation in terms of how are we assessing that remotely. I don't know if you want to just break off and give an answer to that in terms of when you are doing a remote assessment.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. In fact, an example yesterday. I had a kick-off meeting with a new client, and within the meeting was the chief executive officer and also the chief, I can't think of her title particularly, but certainly the chief executive officer was included in this particular kick-off meeting. And what would happen then, following then on from that, the next meeting has been scheduled. The CEO will sit in basically the first sort of opening side of the meeting, the first 10 minutes. So it's very much, yeah, we want the CEO or a member of top management to take part in the initial assessment, initial implementation process.
Fantastic.
So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, in that scenario, that you actually physically having them there, you know,
Yeah.
with the membership, with the management team was kind of the commitment that you needed, or the evidence that you needed in
Exactly.
that scenario. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colin. I will let you carry on.
Okay. So yeah, as I said, this aspect is very prescriptive, and actually it becomes, certain aspects become tangible because taking the accountability, taking the fact that roles and responsibilities should be established. So we'd expect to see something like job specifications, organization chart, which would evidence that the leadership quality side of things is being implemented. So perhaps that would supplement my previous answer. We talk in terms of intended outcome really relating to the management system could well be established within your quality policy. Now, the quality policy itself should be a meaningful document. Top management should be involved in the content within the quality policy, and effectively senior member of possibly CEO, managing director should actually sign it off. The policy itself should reflect the needs and expectations of your interested parties. So once again, this is where the content kicks in. And as I said, throughout the standard, it talks about the system meeting intended outcomes, and your policy should represent the intended outcome of your quality management system. Another area really that the top management should encourage is the communication of the importance of customer focus, because standard itself is very much geared to customer satisfaction, conformity, so that's the importance of effective quality management and conforming to quality management system requirements. So this is where management should encourage, yeah, customer focused, customer satisfaction and conformity of process. Other aspects of leadership that should come under their purview would be making sure that objectives have been set. Now, once again, objectives, they should reflect the commitments made within your quality policy, and also going back to context, reflect issues that you're faced with and needs and expectations of interested parties. The concept of the quality management system standard is also integrating the requirements of the standard into the management system. We don't particularly want to see ISO in one box and a management system in another. We'd be looking for integration. And once again, we talked in terms of customer satisfaction, we talked in terms of conformity of process, but another key aspect of quality management is continual improvement, which once again should be within the culture of the organization, which should be set at leadership level. The next clause is planning. That's based on the plan, do, check and act concept. If we go back to the context and issues faced and needs and expectations of interested parties, these should be managing within this risk-based thinking process. This is the concept of risk-based thinking. Evidence of risk-based thinking would be, say, within strategic business plans. You could establish a risk register. You could conduct a SWOT analysis, but all this, as I said, should be based on the context which was determined within clause 4 and relates to issues faced, needs and expectations, as I said, of interested parties. Sort of questions that during this risk-based thinking approach, we should potentially ask ourselves is, if we do this, what would be the impact on the business or management system? Or if we don't do it, what will the impact be? What I would say about risk-based thinking, that anybody who is a business owner, business manager, the concept of risk-based thinking is with them continually, almost 24/7. And this is certainly the experience that I've had as an assessor when I visit our clients and talking to the CEO, the MD, etc. The concept of risk-based thinking is nothing new and is evident in their day-to-day planning. Another aspect of planning is objective setting. And when it comes to objective setting, as I said, once again, this should reflect from the context that has previously been determined, but also within objective planning, you should reflect commitments of your quality policy. Also part of objective setting is establishing plans as to how you're going to achieve them. Also, whose responsibility for their achievement and what are the timescales. Objectives should be specific, measurable, achievable, reliable, and time-bound, and under the SMART process. As with risk assessments, as I said, consider the context and also make sure that your quality policy and the commitments within it is reflected in your objectives. Okay, the next section is support. It relates to allocation and management of resources, and resources include people, your infrastructure, and the work environment. Infrastructure, that includes buildings, and sort of the sort of evidence that we'd be looking for, perhaps a little bit difficult from a remote perspective, but ongoing in the future would be they maintained planned maintenance programs in place, things such as air conditioning serviced by qualified engineers. That's a legislative requirement. Equipment used within your business, that would include hardware and software. The equipment that's used should be safe. It should be serviced regularly. There should be records of service. Operating manuals should be available. And any equipment that is responsible for monitoring and measuring should be calibrated to make sure that it's effective. We also would potentially like to see an inventory of the assets used within the organisation. Part and parcel of infrastructure is obviously the human resource function, health and safety. We would expect to see a health and safety manager. If you didn't manage your IT in-house, we'd be looking to see if you've got an IT support company and what level of support they would provide you. Part and parcel of infrastructure as well would be logistical support, transport, etc. That's one aspect of infrastructure. The work environment, essentially the work environment should be planned and it should be conducive to delivering products and services on a conformed basis. Work environment is a combination of psychological, social, and physical elements. I give you an indication: psychological, stress reducing, burnout prevention; social, non-discriminate, non-confrontational; and physical elements: temperature, light, airflow, hygiene, and noise. In summary, work environment should include welfare and well-being. Within support as well is the concept and process of staff management. When you identify staff requirements, when you're doing your resourcing, look at everything from a process basic point of view. So part of, once you've identified your staff resource, you would then move into the recruitment process. Once new staff have been recruited, that would take you into onboarding. Something that we'd be looking for with regards to onboarding, there's quality management system, culture, quality policy, etc. Do all these feature within your onboarding process? Following on from onboarding then would be ongoing training, identification of training needs, development of staff, the appraisal process, knowledge sharing, and awareness as to roles and responsibilities. So once again, we talked earlier about using this as a process-based tool, and staff management is an ideal example of adopting a process-based approach. We talked briefly about equipment. We talked about measuring equipment, and it should be calibrated, so that's measurement traceability. And within this aspect, we would, if you do have equipment that requires calibration, what the evidence that we would want to see would be your program of calibration to make sure that the equipment is calibrated prior to its expiry date, and also certificates of calibration as well to actually evidence that they are within calibration. Within Clause 7, support also is the control of documented information. I think that control of documented information is key to a well-managed quality management system. This ensures that the correct documentation is available when and where required and is suitably protected. Documented information, that includes that documentation required by the standard and that required by yourselves, which you deem necessary to ensure your management system is effective. One tip that I could share with you, as a minimum, make sure that the documented information that you have will be adequate and sufficient to prove your position if ever there was a dispute. If we can just go back a couple, I'm still talking about documented information, so sorry for that. Yeah, documented information, essentially your templates and completed templates, that is your records. It can either be in hard or soft copy. Nowadays, obviously, it's very much held on an electronic basis. All documented information should be referenced and its retention period recorded. There should also be established processes relating to the creation and amendment to ensure conformity. Within the control of documented information, whilst the documented procedure is no longer required, we do provide a simple flowchart for our clients to follow and give them an indication as to how the process should work. I would also expect to see evidence of, say, data backup, retrieval exercises undertaken, access control as to the accessing information within your network, software licenses up to date, and through IT or IT support viruses and firewalls to protect your documented information. If we move on now, this section, operation, is basically what you do as an organization to meet the needs and expectations of your customers. It relates to how you manage your service delivery, product production, and ensure you have proven, established processes in place to make sure you identify and control and deliver your customer requirements. You determine what documented procedures you require to manage the key areas of your production service delivery. As a minimum, we would work with you to develop an overview process flowchart from the moment you receive an inquiry right through to its fulfillment. One of the key areas for me within the clause is making sure that you fully understand the requirements of your customer, including statutory and regulatory obligations, and also using your expertise to provide the correct solution. You should also ensure, through contract review, you have the know-how and capacity to meet and deliver your customers' needs and expectations. Now, as I said earlier, the standard is very much generic. So what you will find within this clause will not necessarily be each clause or each section of the clause applicable to you as a business. There could be certain areas that you don't undertake, and on that basis, you would not have to evidence them. If we just briefly go through these, because it's quite a significant number. Conformity of process, control in the delivery process, the sort of things that we would be looking for would be you meeting your customer specification, working off latest drawings, in-process checks, quality control processes, checking orders against dispatch, meetings with customers on an update basis to determine progress. Outsourced processes, that relates to your suppliers, it relates to your subcontractors. And the important thing is that your suppliers and your subcontractors meet your specified requirements. Because at the end of the day, if something does go wrong, the contract is with you and you can't blame your suppliers or your subcontractors for not meeting your customer requirement. Within this section, control of outsourced processes, is managing the evaluation and the monitoring the performance of your suppliers and subcontractors. We would expect to see an approved supplier subcontractor list. We would expect to see that your suppliers supply you with product that meets specification. We would expect your subcontractors to have the appropriate insurances and certificates of competence. And potentially within this aspect, it could involve supplier audits, it could involve site audits if your subcontractors are working on site, so you can monitor their performance. Design and development, this may or may apply to your business. Design and development is very much geared to the customer brief, customer requirement, and includes verification and validation at appropriate stages of the development process. Identification and traceability. Once again, this may not apply to you. This is where the origin specification, say, of raw materials is critical to your supply and delivery chain, particularly if there was an issue of product recall. Within identification and traceability, could include certificates of conformity. It could include batch sampling. But this section is all about in your production process if you need to go back to the source in case of any issues. Next aspect of operation, customer property. It may well be that you receive from your customer pre-issue materials, components. Customer property would include intellectual property. It also includes customer and personal data, not customer data necessarily, but personal data. And the concept of this is making sure that all customer property is safeguarded against misuse or loss, and having a communication process if anything untoward happens to customer property. Preservation of product, that would link into such as storage, packaging, contamination control, and protecting your product during either transmission or transporting. If we looked at post-delivery activities, combine it with, say, release of product, this is usually documented in line with your contract or tender. Can include service level agreements, the issue of operating manuals, installation and commissioning, certificates of conformity, and ultimately, if within contracts or tenders, sign off and acceptance of your product or service delivery. Management of non-conforming non-conforming product. This ensures that product that's not fit for purpose doesn't enter the supply or delivery chain. It can relate to goods received that aren't a specification that you may have ordered. It could be goods that you've manufactured that are not up to specification. An aspect of non-conforming product would be that if, for argument's sake, something's not up to specification, potentially it could be sold on a concession basis, which would need to be formally evidenced and documented and agreed to avoid future dispute. Potentially as well, certainly within manufacturing, we would expect to see within the manufacturing or in a concept of a remote implementation, confirmation that there was a quarantine area within your production areas of the business. The next section is performance evaluation. Now, I can't see any point in having a management system unless you evaluate its performance to make sure that it's fit for purpose and it's meeting needs and expectations of all interested parties. You are given an option as an organization to make decisions as to what you intend or would like or need to monitor and measure. Instances of performance evaluation, you could set yourselves key performance indicators. This could be through delivery times, reworks, getting things right first time, etc. It could relate to the measurements of service level agreements undertaken and as your level of conformity to those service level agreements. But one of the main things, important aspects of performance evaluation is trend analysis. It's basically collating data, evaluating data, and looking for trends. Though within the performance evaluation process, there are some mandatory areas: customer satisfaction, internal audit, and management review meetings. Customer satisfaction, it doesn't necessarily mean conducting surveys. Oh yes, there's a lot around now, Trustpilot, SurveyMonkey, etc. Once again, you can determine the process as to how you determine the level of customer satisfaction. And it may not necessarily be through the survey process, because you don't always get meaningful information. And also, to get customers to complete the survey may not be the easiest thing in the world. You could have a mix of measures within customer satisfaction. Part of the mix of measures could be the level of complaints. It could be the amount of repeat business you obtain. Another area could be, say, lost business. By lost business, what I mean, if a customer not come back to you for some period of time, as part of your sales and marketing process, you could contact them and essentially ask them why. And then that would give an indication as to whether or not it was down to service, quality, may well be price, but at least it's going to give you an indication as to why your customers, some customers, no longer do business with you. Obviously, quite a few of you have account managers. Account managers will meet up or speak with their customers, and during this process, you could gauge the level of satisfaction. Testimonials, that's another area for gauging customer satisfaction. We would, as assessors, expect to see the results of your customer satisfaction process. We need to know what your process is, and we need to see how you're using the information that you're getting from your customers. If you look at internal auditing, audit should be conducted on a planned basis. There should be a program. If your customers of ours, we would tend to audit your management system to ensure compliance to the standard. But our recommendation is always that you would audit your key business processes to make sure that they're being followed, they're fit for purpose, or alternatively, a better way of doing things could be determined. You should record the results of those audits, and you should be looking, once again, for trends, and you should be looking to capture improvement opportunities. The final mandatory section of performance evaluation is conducting management review meetings. These should be held on a planned basis with the frequency your choice. And the concept, the idea behind management review meetings is really to make sure that your management system is fit for purpose and that you've captured improvement opportunities. We as an organization at ISO QSL provide an agenda for you to follow, which links into the requirement of the standard. And also within the management review meeting process, we would expect to see top management involvement. Finally, as I would have said beforehand, the drivers behind quality management are customer satisfaction, our conformity of process, and finally, improvement. Improvement should be conducted on a continual basis. The concept of improvement is to enhance your customer requirements and customer satisfaction. Also, you should look at future products and services. You should be looking to enhance those products to make sure that they continue to meet your customer. Also, part and parcel of improvement is the correcting and preventing or reducing undesired effects within the business and the management system, and also improving the performance and effectiveness of quality management. Fundamental improvement tools, effectively non-conformance and the complaints processes. Definition of non-conformance, or definitions of non-conformance, something that's happened that shouldn't have happened, possibly a supplier or subcontractor letting you down, non-observance of procedures. Within the non-conformance process is the action of taking corrective action. That essentially is putting it right in the first instance, and then following on from corrective action is preventive action. That's to stop the non-conformance reoccurring, which then will lead you to improvement. As once again, we would expect to see, as assessors, records of non-conformance, records of how they've been corrected, and what prevention activities have been undertaken. And we'd also expect to see what improvement opportunities have been captured, and also what trend analysis has been conducted as well. So that basically is a brief and a quick run through of the clauses of the standard, what they mean to you as an organisation, what you should be looking to comply with, and also what our assessor would be looking to see that you're conducting to evidence compliance. If we now look at the process of remote implementation, and if it's I'm not quite sure, there are some of the boxes, the type is quite small, but obviously we can forward this process out to you if you so wish. First of all, what would tend to happen if the client decides and accepts to come on board is that we would send a confirmation email, and within that email we would request the relevant information that we require to see. Once that email had gone out, and this is what I did yesterday with a new client, I had a brief conversation. I went through the contents of the requirements to make sure that they fully understood what was required of them and gave them guidance, because it may not be evidence from the request, from the information request, because it may be conducted in some other form or vehicle. With that brief call as well, we could talk in terms of timescale to receipt of the information, and that would then lead us on to the next step of the process, is that once the information is received, the assessor would conduct a desktop review. Following that desktop review, once again, we contact you, the client, to discuss the information that you forwarded. Also, during this particular conversation, we would gather information, because we do provide a signpost manual, and we would gather, glean information to populate that manual. It may well be that further clarification or information be required, and this would be agreed with the client, and possibly timescales as to the presentation of this information would be agreed as well. Following on from that particular phone call, a report would be provided, and within that report, effectively, what I would tend to do would be essentially highlight the recommendations, and then put the caveat on the basis that I would say, on the basis of the completion of the recommendations within the agreed timescales, certification would normally follow. So that gives the client, the client, the exact position. Basically, you send us the information, it's appropriate, and it's all completed within the agreed period of time. Certification would follow. Yeah, once the report is sent out, that would determine another phone call from the assessor to discuss the report and confirm the findings and confirm the decision with regards to certification. On satisfactory assessment then, we would confirm the presentation date. And the presentation date basically would confirm and include the release of the certificate. Within the presentation, which once again would be conducted remotely, we would talk in terms of next steps. This would be the implementation program, what you should be doing going forward. And we do have an actual implementation document which we provide. Reference would also be made to the manual, and there would be an option to go through and clarify the contents of the manual. And at the end of that phone call, effectively the client would be fully certificated, and the certificate would be sent out initially remotely, electronically I should say, and then a formal hard copy would be followed as well. Okay, so that's, I think, from my point of view, Jennifer, and you delegates, that effectively is my part of the presentation.
Thank you, Colin. And I think what's important to note here is the different types of software that we have been using to deliver our services remotely. We've been using Zoom with screen sharing, Microsoft Teams. I know there's something available from Amazon, GoToMeeting, ClickToMeeting. There's file sharing software available. More often now, businesses have the ability to share files electronically. So really, what might have been challenging maybe sort of 4 or 5 years ago with the way that technology is now, and obviously everybody's kind of learned this in a crash course over the last few weeks, with how it is now. I think that actually it's been even more, it's been even easier for us to be able to deliver this to our customers remotely. I think that's fair to say, Colin.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've just to enhance what you've just said. Yeah, quite rightly. We will get information emailed through, but also during the remote process, evidence can be shared within those delivery processes. That's been available through Zoom, Google Hangout. Exactly as you mentioned. So yeah, there's a mix of ways and means that we can gather the information.
Fantastic. And obviously, you know, once we come out of the COVID-19 situation, we would be looking at a site visit, because that's obviously very key and important. But at the moment, it's something we can do again via imagery, via video. We've done it before, people taking us on tours if they are still in their premises or in their workspaces. We are very much led by the client.
Jennifer, only a second, Jennifer, if I can just enhance that as well. Yeah, we have a client over in America, and we do remote auditing, and they always take me on a guided tour. I think we use Zoom, or no, we might use, I can't think of the medium that we use. But they do go and give me a guided tour, and we look at the production process, storage process, storage areas, etc.
Absolutely, and I think that is just testament to where technology is these days. So I want to move on to some questions now, but before I do, I have a couple of polls that we just want to gather some information. So a couple of questions. So I'm just going to launch the poll now. So hopefully that all comes through to you all that you can answer. And once I've got the majority of your answers, I'll close that polling. We did have a couple of questions that I'd like to answer. Yes, all the slides will be available. And we will be sending that out to everybody that's registered via the Zoom app. Question earlier on we had from Jess was, do you know if it's due to be updated soon, the 9001, I guess 2022? Colin, I don't believe there's been any official guidance on the next delivery of the new version of the standard. The 2015 was quite a monumental shift in focus from what we had to deal with our clients. We don't envisage any major changes because they've all now moved to the Annex SL structure, high-level structure, which those of you who do run the system or have experience of it will be familiar with. Colin, do you know of a date for release of the new version?
Nothing's been brought to my attention. And as you say, we still usually 7-year cycle, 2022. All I would say, well, perhaps, yeah, I see a note there, 5-year cycle.
But it then takes a couple of years. Yeah,
to
5-year cycle.
To get it out there. Yeah. What I would say is, though, I've noticed basically with all the standard revisions, effectively what happens is that they're just bringing them up to date. There's very rarely are there any radical changes, but they reflect the current business position. And a few times when it went to the 2015, a few of our clients were quite disappointed because there was nothing radical within the changes. And most of when we did the implementation process, the changes were already in place. It really is. That's my understanding.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, Philip's right. They are on a 5-year cycle, but then depending on, obviously, the level of changes depends on the level of how much a business actually physically has to adapt and update its management system. So just coming to the final question then, as a guide, what percentage of assessments can be carried out remotely? With regards to what we're doing at the moment, we are carrying out all assessments remotely. So actually what the process Colin has run through today doesn't just relate to the 9001 standard, it also relates to the other standards that we certificate to. And whilst we want to get back in visiting clients physically as soon as possible, obviously under the current circumstances, we're pursuing all of our assessments remotely at present. I believe that's what other bodies are doing as well. I have spoken to numerous of our, I suppose, colleagues and competitors, and everybody is seemingly doing exactly the same thing. So at the moment, Tony, I would say that is 100% of our assessments are being carried out remotely. There is always going to be a requirement for physical visits. Even our American clients, we do visit them once a year. Yes, I think that this will change things going forward, if I'm honest. I think that there will be more opportunities for us to remotely deliver going forward, both in and out of the UK. So I think that that's all of the questions answered. What level of detail Philip, what level of detail information is required from ourselves? Could I have a little bit more explanation on that question, Philip, if that's okay, before I launch into answering that? In what respect? Do you mean during the assessment process? Do you mean... Oh, do you mean the list of information that Colin mentioned? So generally the list of information, oh God, Colin, how many points is that? Is it about 15, 16 points of information? Things like organisational chart, if it's available. Colin, I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's there's quite a substantial amount of what we call mandatory information that should be recorded, and it says within the standards, it gives it a clear indication when it says it should be documented. So, I mean, if it's I don't, Jennifer, you wanted, we do have a list of mandatory information that's required, and would it, rather than go through it all now, would it be better to send that out?
Yeah, absolutely, we can send that out. That's not a problem if you'd like to receive that.
I can give basically the sort of the sort of documented information that we'd expect to see. We'd expect to see on a documented basis the scope, needs and expectations of your interested parties, your quality policy, your objectives, any processes that you put in place, results of calibration, internal audit results, customer satisfaction results, management review meeting minutes, non-conformance reports, complaints. So I mean that's it's not a comprehensive list, but it gives you an indication as to the sort of information
absolutely
that asking. And yeah, you know, and yeah, you're right. Organization chart, job specs, all this gives us an indication as to the level of compliance.
Absolutely, and on assessment stage, we don't actually expect all of this to be fully complete. We appreciate that there's going to be areas of non-conformance, otherwise you'd probably be certificated already. So our job is to really gather what you have got, find out what you haven't got, and plug the gaps, really. When it comes to ongoing auditing, that's obviously where we would expect, once you've been certificated, where we would expect you to have full and complete records against all of those. But for the assessment purposes, if you're looking at implementing the standard from scratch, we would be looking at what you currently have, how can we tweak what you have in order to be compliant to the standard, because, you know, businesses that have been in business for a number of years are likely to run a lot of these processes already. You might just not be exactly aware of how it relates to the standard due to the terminology used within the standard itself. If you've ever read the ISO 9001 standard, it uses some lovely terminology in there, and stuff that maybe we don't relate directly to our business until it's been explained fully. Okay, so our contact details are on the screen now if you did want to be in contact with us, and I will be emailing out a link to the recording of this webinar and the slides, and now, as Colin mentioned, the list of information that would be required. I suppose all that's left to say now is a massive thank you to Colin. Some excellent information and tips there, I think we'd all agree. We, as a business, are currently delivering all remotely, so if anybody wants to speak to us about that, then please do get in touch. We are also running more webinars. Next week we're running one in conjunction with a company called BizSmart, and that one is on 5 ways to boost the value of your business. I've actually done this session before, really useful as a business kind of leader, on different tips and hints that you can do to increase the value of your organization. So if anybody wants to sign up for that, I will attempt now to drop the link into the chat panel, which I think I have managed to do. So please do come along to that. It's next Tuesday, I believe, the 28th. So again, if you register via Eventbrite, there you will get an invite to a Zoom meeting on that one. So unless there are any more questions, oh, I think one's just popped up. Oh, thanks, Jess. Thank you for your comment there. A great revision for you, yes. So unless there's any other questions that you want answering, I think we will conclude and look at that 11:59, bang on time. No, I don't think we have any more. So, okay, I'm going to close the session now. Again, thank you all for your attendance and your participation, much appreciated. And we will be sending the slides out shortly. So thank you very much.